Welcome everyone to the 44th Assembly District Democratic Committee and 51st Assembly District Committee for Candidates Forum for the 39th Council District. My name is District Leader Diana Gonzalez, and I'm thrilled to thank Nico from the 51st and Tony and Courtney and Amy for putting all of this together. So thank you so much. Of course, a huge thank you to our moderator, Ben Max. And Ben, if you're ready, I'm ready to turn it over to you.
I am ready. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks, Diana. Thanks to all the organizers from the two Assembly District Committees, 44th and 51st. I'm Ben Max, Program Director at New York Law School Center for New York City and State Law. Part of my work there is hosting public events, and I hope everybody joins us for some of those soon. We have Congressman Dan Goldman coming for a speech on the morning of June 17th that everyone's welcome to. And I also host my podcast, Max Politics. If you don't listen already, check it out when you get a chance. Thank you all for tuning in for this important candidate forum in the Democratic primary for the 39th City Council District in Brooklyn. I don't need to tell you what neighborhoods are in the district because this is largely district residents and voters here. The voting in this primary is upon us, with mail-in voting already underway, early voting starting on Saturday, June 14th, and going through June 22nd. And then primary day, of course, is June 24th. Tonight, we'll hear from the two leading candidates, incumbent City Council member Shahana Hanif and challenger Maya Kornberg. Also on your Democratic primary ballot, as most of you probably know, are races for borough president, comptroller, public advocate, mayor, and more. And ranked choice voting is at play, so be ready to rank your candidates up to 5 on your ballot. All right, let's get moving here into tonight's candidate forum very quickly. The format, there will be 2-minute opening statements in just a moment from each candidate. Then I will ask a series of questions that the candidates will each have up to 2 minutes to answer. If I feel like we need to tighten things up because we're running low on time, I might give you a minute as we move along. And then I might ask you 30-second follow-up questions or give you a 30-second rebuttal if you're criticized or if a candidate is named in an answer in some way at my discretion. I'll give you a few seconds to respond to your opponent in that manner. The timekeeper will be flashing some signs for when to wrap up, so keep an eye on that. And hopefully we don't have to mute anybody. And please be respectful of each other and the audience. I'll alternate at different times who starts each round and mix it up a bit, but don't worry about that. Just be ready to go, candidates, when I call on you to get going. At the end of this forum, there will be a lightning round of yes, no, or otherwise very short answer questions as we wrap things up. All right. Opening statements. We're going to start with
Actually, Max, just one quick thing beforehand. I am the official timekeeper. Yes. So candidates, keep an eye out on my window for your signage.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'll jump in when the time's up with a thank you. And when you hear me jump in with that little thank you, that means really wrap it up, please. All right. Opening statements. We'll start with Councilmember Hanif. 2 minutes. Over to you for your opening statement.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I'm Councilmember Shahana Hanif, proud to represent our community in the City Council. Brooklyn is in my bones. My parents immigrated from Bangladesh and built a life in Kensington. I went to PS 230, graduated from Brooklyn College, and got my start in local government working for Brad Lander. It's the honor of my life to fight for the neighborhoods that raised me. Since 2021, I've solved thousands of constituent cases, made our streets safer, and delivered critical repairs to schools, libraries, parks, and NYCHA buildings. As chair of the Progressive Caucus, I've led the resistance to Mayor Adams's budget cuts and City Hall corruption. I've pushed back on Trump-era attacks on civil rights and passed laws to protect workers, abortion access, and immigrant communities. I'm proud of what we've achieved, but the work isn't done. Families are being priced out of Brooklyn. We need to bring rents down, win universal public childcare, and keep this city livable for all of us. I'm the only candidate with the experience to deliver. I've helped create affordable housing right here in the district, ended forced broker fees, secured hundreds of new public childcare seats. That's why corporate PACs are spending against me, and why I'm backed by the broad trusted coalition fighting for a fairer city. I'm endorsed by every sitting elected official who's weighed in, including AOC, Brad Lander, Zohran Mamdani, Bobby Carroll, Andrew Gennardis, and Antonio Reynoso. I'm also the only candidate endorsed by Planned Parenthood, the Working Families Party, and labor unions. I'm excited for tonight's conversation, and I hope to earn your support.
Thank you. Maya Kornberg, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you for having me tonight. So I've dedicated my career to making democracy work for everyone, and that is why I'm running for city council. As a senior fellow manager at the Brennan Center for Justice, I've worked on making voting more accessible, legislators more responsive, and standing up to the outsized power of super PACs and special interests. Prior to that, I worked with the United Nations in the Middle East and internationally on strengthening civic engagement, and I've taught political science at several universities. And so right now, when our democracy is under attack, more in danger than it has been since the Civil War, City Council will be our best line of defense in guarding funding for education and transportation and healthcare, for protecting our democracy locally. Right now, as we see Trump emboldening political violence, we need to think about keeping our communities safe. And safety means knowing I can push my son in a stroller on the street safely, and that my husband can bike to work on bike lanes safely. It means knowing that we are safe from floods and fires and climate change, and knowing that we are collaborating with local law enforcement on keeping the community safe. Right now, we're seeing a real rise in political violence. And so it is really disheartening to see my opponent and the super PACs supporting her, spreading these same misinformation, anti-Semitic tropes, and using Trumpian tactics. And it just emboldens me and strengthens my resolve to fight for robust democracy, robust elections, and standing up to this kind of hate. I know that the ABCs of good government, as someone who's spent my life working on it, are that people want to be listened to. They want to be heard, and people here in the district don't feel heard when they call the district office to report a pothole and it's closed, or when they are stiff-armed at the first sight of disagreement with the council member. Well, I've worked in conflict zones. I'm well-versed in sitting with disagreement. I don't have litmus tests for who I work with. I know that cutting through the divisiveness and bringing home the goods for the district is what we need to make our democracy work better.
Thank you. Several things you brought up in referencing Councilmember Hanif will come up very soon. So I'm going to wait on rebuttals there, because we're going to get to a few of those very things very soon. But staying with you, Ms. Kornberg, for now, for this next question. The question is very simply, and please don't go into a lot of detail on these things as a sort of headlines, but what do you see as the 2 or 3 most pressing problems or challenges facing the district? And what is your one solution, whether it's a piece of legislation or a funding priority or something else, to address each one? So we don't need a long description of the problems or challenges here, but if you could name what you see as the 2 or 3 biggest challenges facing the district and your top solution for addressing each one. Go ahead.
The biggest challenge I hear about every day from constituents and when I'm living is the affordability crisis that we're facing. I face this myself as a renter in the district, and as the only parent in this race, as someone who faces daycare bills every month. So not just fully funding 3K, but also doing things like creating a fast-track permitting system for childcare providers and creating an Office of Early Childhood in the city can really help address that prong of the crisis. Of course, alongside building affordable housing and increasing kind of tenant protections, good cause eviction legislation, rent stabilization, things like that. Those are 2 major prongs I hear about every day and I'm experiencing myself.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hanif, over to you. What do you see as 2 or 3 of the biggest challenges facing the district right now? And what are your specific solutions for each one? Go ahead. Oh, we got to unmute you. Start again. Oh.
My top 3 issues are affordability, defending New York City from Trump, and community safety. Our city has an affordability crisis. I'm delivering new permanently affordable housing in the district through the Arrow Linen Project, Gowanus Green, and City of Yes. I've taken on big real estate and won, passing the FAIR Act to eliminate forced broker fees, and I've established hundreds of new public childcare seats for previously excluded families. But I'm not stopping there. We need universal 2K and 3K. I've led the charge on council legislation to protect New Yorkers from Trump. After Roe v. Wade was overturned, I wrote and passed the Abortion Rights Act. When Trump came after the trans community, I wrote and passed the Affirm Act. And I'm fighting like hell to pass my bill, the New York City Trust Act, to strengthen our sanctuary city protections to fight back against ICE. On safety, I take the subway to work every single day, and I experience firsthand the sense of unease so many are feeling. I'm leading the Crisis to Care 2025 budget campaign as Progressive Caucus co-chair to invest $90 million into supportive housing, mental health beds, and crisis response workers. I'm fighting to make universal daylighting in our district a reality to ensure pedestrians and cyclists are safe.
Thank you. Okay. I will note that a lot of my questions are based on the dozens and dozens of questions that came in through the form that was issued around RSVPing to this forum. There were many, many good questions, a lot under certain themes, and I will say both our candidates here hit on several of the repeat themes: affordability, safety on the streets of the district, including for pedestrians and bikers, and sort of general safety issues. And we'll get into some more of each of those in just a minute. There were also questions generally that already has been referenced by both candidates about individual candidate records and leadership, and we'll get to some of that in a minute too. But first, let's talk a little bit more about housing. And so Councilmember Hanif, we'll stick with you here to start this one. Say a little bit more about your future vision for housing. What is your housing platform, so to speak, in terms of what policies, what projects you want to pursue going into the future? How can New York City more broadly solve the housing crisis it's in, and especially what can be done in the district, both for current Council District 39 residents and those who might be interested in moving to the district? Go ahead.
Thank you. This is an important question. I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm a renter, and before my time in government, I was a tenant organizer and kept hundreds of NYCHA residents in their homes. I'm proud to have passed the Ara Linen rezoning, which will deliver the first new affordable housing units, 100 units, Windsor Terrace has seen in my lifetime. I listened to the community concerns, lowered the height from 13 stories to 10 stories without losing a single unit of housing. Many young people don't think they'll ever have a shot at raising a family in the neighborhoods they grew up in. That's why I supported City of Yes, to allow for a little bit more housing to be built everywhere in the city. A next priority is, of course, preservation of affordable housing. We need to preserve existing affordable housing. That's why I'm the only candidate in this race who has consistently called for a rent freeze for all rent stabilized tenants. I was just at the Rent Guidelines Board hearing earlier this week. We need to create social housing and preserve affordable developments like 63 Tiffany Place, residents I've been working with since before my time as council member. And I want to wrap with NYCHA. We need to prioritize public housing preservation, and I've been laser focused on ensuring that the $200 million investment that was promised to the Wyckoff Gardens and Gowanus NYCHA campuses are fully implemented. They will have renovated homes, and we often forget about public housing. So I'm proud that this is something that I'll be able to really prioritize and take care of.
Thank you. Ms. Kornberg, you obviously spent most of your last answer on housing, but you can reiterate some of that and maybe add to it if you'd like. But why don't you start on this issue that Councilmember Hanif just raised about your stance on what should happen around rents for rent stabilized tenants from the Rent Guidelines Board? Why don't you start there on your stance on that and then move into more on housing?
I not only support a rent freeze, but I have actually spoken on many occasions about the need to expand rent stabilization. I would say not just for residential, but also for commercial spaces. I care a lot about making this a district that remains one where we have a thriving small business community. And so piloting rent stabilization for commercial spaces can also make a lot of sense here. I think we need to do that alongside expanding good cause eviction legislation and holding predatory landlords and leasing companies accountable for, for frankly, in many instances, not following the law and not keeping tenants safe when they should. But I also think that it's important how we build this housing. And so from Arrow Linen to the BMT housing development getting, which is under review now, and
Brooklyn
any
Marine
other
Terminal.
housing that would, the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, that would come across my desk. For me, the main priority would be maximizing utility for the community. For the community, having an actual open dialogue. That's not something that we saw here on the different housing projects that the council member referenced. That's not something we're seeing enough of with the BMT, again, the Brooklyn Marine Terminal process right now. I hear about that all the time. There's a lack of transparency and a lack of open communication. And so residents need to know that their council member is really prioritizing their well-being and the well-being of the community and deepening affordability in any housing proposal for anything that gets built.
Let me just follow up real quick. Is there something specific that you think didn't go right in the Arrow Linen process? Seemed to me like many other ULURP considerations, there was quite a lot of community feedback and negotiation and a lot of public hearings and so forth. What do you think went wrong there, if anything?
Certainly, there were a lot of public hearings. I attended some of them, but I can tell you from conversations with dozens of community members that I heard of many instances of folks feeling stiff-armed at the first sight of disagreement with the council member and feeling like there was just not someone to talk to if they disagreed. So I think it's that underlying trust that went wrong there. And again, I think that is the same process as you're saying with ULURP, but also with engaging with the community that we're going to have to go through, when we build any new housing development. So that trust and that ability to communicate across disagreement is what was missing.
And quickly, you said expand good cause eviction. How would you look to expand it?
Well, right now, a lot of small landlords and, smaller buildings have absolutely no protections. And I've heard of so many instances of folks being treated unfairly as a result. Now, of course, small landlords, need different protections and we need to handle this in a nuanced way. But I also think that we shouldn't just leave tenants who are living in smaller buildings without any protections. So that's one clear way in which I'd like to see it expanded.
Thank you. Councilmember Hanif, let me bring you back in for a moment just to respond on the Arrow Linen rezoning process and anything you want to say in response about this idea that when there were constituents who disagreed with some of your approach, they were not heard.
Well, first, I just want to thank the Windsor Terrace community for all of their engagement because they helped inform what has now been an unprecedented project that we passed in the city council with 40% affordable housing. So the deep engagement is how we arrived to the project that we are going to see in Windsor Terrace. We are in an affordability crisis, and housing.
Let's not go any further. If you want last couple of
okay.
seconds just on hearing community voices. Anything else you want to say on that?
I will always incorporate community voices, and that's why we went from 13 stories to 10 stories.
Okay, thank you. Okay, coming back to Maya Kornberg here to start this one off. There were a lot of concerns, as I mentioned, from people interested in this forum, hearing more about plans for pedestrian, bicyclists, safety, people just getting around the neighborhood, not in motor vehicles. Also some concerns about e-bikes and things like that. So just, the general sort of street safety of the district and getting around. Will you be specific in terms of things you want to pursue, whether it's citywide policy, district policy, specific projects? How would you, if elected to the city council, really look to improve getting around safety in the district? Go ahead.
So it's certainly something that I hear about every day on the doors as well, and is a major priority of mine. So I'll list a few things that I think that we need to be doing, because right now, in terms of protecting congestion pricing as it's being attacked by Trump and others, the way that we make that work is by first building safe alternatives. Curb extensions really help folks like me moving around with a stroller in the district, and daylighting is a major priority. Bike lanes, we know, help keep cyclists off of sidewalks. We know that having bus lines, we talked about new housing getting built here, but we don't have the infrastructure to accommodate this yet. So let's restore the B71 bus line. Let's think about how we're expanding subway infrastructure. Let's bring more accessible subway stations to the district with elevators that can accommodate folks like me with a stroller or folks with wheelchairs and mobility issues. Let's also be thinking about piloting some more open streets here in the district, particularly around schools. I think could make a lot of sense where we don't need through traffic, and lowering speed limits around schools. When I attend precinct meetings for the 76th and 78th precinct, I hear a lot about folks who are worried about traffic around their kids' schools. So I think lowering speed limits around schools makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I think would help tremendously here in terms of safety is really handling the mental health crisis in our subways. And I use the subway to go to work every day. And so that's why I've been advocating for things like crisis first responders that can help respond to nonviolent, non-criminal mental health crises on the subway and help get the resources that folks need.
And while we're on that subject, just very quickly, were you supportive of the changes in state law that were just passed to sort of loosen the ability for outreach workers and others to involuntarily remove people from public spaces?
I support involuntary removal when it is essential, as it is in many instances, for the safety of the individual and for the safety of everyone around them. Again, I think that safety is the priority, and having folks with the tools that they need to keep people safe, and that's mental health training, and other local law enforcement with the relevant training. I think that that's the priority here.
Councilmember Hanif, let's bring you in on this question of sort of getting around safety, pedestrians, bikers, people with strollers, wheelchairs, and other needs. This seems to be maybe an area where there's some real agreement between the candidates, because you did already talk a little bit about this, but say a little bit more about your priorities and if there's any specific spots, projects, corridors in the district you'd most look to address here moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was diagnosed with lupus at 17, the Church Avenue FG station elevator saved my life. However, I had to get to Brooklyn College. There was no elevator at the stop that led to Brooklyn College. There was a bus. I had to map out my entire life based on which buses and trains were accessible that had elevators or escalators. I had applied for paratransit services and I was denied. So that experience has really taught me about how important and critical accessibility is when it comes to our transportation network. Street safety is a #1 issue. My government office hears about. I'm working to pass universal daylighting. It is a very popular legislation in the council. We want to make sure that everyone's crossing the street safely. Today, I just introduced a new bill with Good Neighbors of Park Slope. Really, really fortunate to work with these constituents. This bill would require city bike users to comprehensively review the rules of the road before unlocking a bike for the first time, and not just e-bikes. I also want to talk about cars. They are overwhelmingly the majority of traffic-related fatalities. And I'm advocating and working very closely with Senator Andrew Goodnardis to pass the Stop Super Speeders bill to ensure that our city cracks down on its worst offenders. After the tragic death of a cyclist on 9th Street, one of the most dangerous corridors in the district, I established the 9th Street protected bike lane. And our office just announced that Court Street will be getting a protected bike lane. We need to expand on our open streets, which is why I'm so grateful for Avenue C Plaza, Kensington Plaza, 4th Street Plaza, all of which I've had a role to play and helped establish.
Thank you. All right, we're actually going to start again this time with Ms. Kornberg, if we can bring you back in. So I want to zoom out a little bit. You both got at this a little bit in your opening statements, but I think it's important now that we've talked about the nitty-gritty of maybe the two top issues that people in the district were concerned about here coming into this forum to hear from you about, and we'll get into some other things as well. But to zoom back out a little bit, this is obviously a race with an incumbent seeking another term and a challenger saying that they are the better option to represent the district for the next years. So, Ms. Kornberg, say a little bit more about your specific argument about why Councilmember Hanif doesn't deserve that other term, and exactly how on your main 2 points, let's say, on that, you would be an improvement. Go ahead.
So right now we are facing a crisis, not just of, all the local crises that we're talking about, affordability, housing, but we're facing a crisis of democracy. And as a progressive movement, I think we need to be focused on results. So I was disappointed to see that, when Councilmember Hanif became co-chair of the Progressive Caucus of the council, she said to folks, take a pledge to defund the police or leave the caucus. And we lost half of the Progressive Caucus as a result. To me, that's exactly the example of how we differ in our approach to what it means to be a progressive right now. My approach is we can disagree on 9 out of 10 things. If we can work together on affordable childcare, which is a real policy priority of mine, let's work together on that. It's about cutting through the divisiveness. I don't have litmus tests for who I work with if working together means bringing home results for the district. And that includes having also an open mind to constituents who disagree with me, because my job is to represent them. Agree or disagree, that's what representative democracy is about. And so I would want to not just have an open district office when we have a district office here that was closed for several months last year, but also have a mobile office, which I've seen work, and I've worked with legislators to put into effect many parts of the country, which moves around the district. It's a pop-up table with a staffer. If it's sunny out, you can be in a park, you can be in a library. It's really easy to do, and that allows you to be even more engaged. That's why I want to reform community boards to make them more accessible, because they can be a wonderful tool, but right now they're just making loud voices louder in many instances. So I want to strengthen and deepen civic engagement here, centering my constituents and their voices, and make sure that we are not so focused on slogans that we are losing sight of the results.
Thank you.
Ben, can I
Oh yeah, no,
respond?
this is
Okay.
your 2 minutes to either respond to specifically what was said, or just make 2 more minutes of your case for another 4 years here. We're going to get into some more specific topics, but the floor is yours for 2 minutes. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to address the Progressive Caucus piece. Since I've taken leadership, the Progressive Caucus has been extremely effective. We've passed so many of our key legislative priorities, including banning solitary confinement, ending forced broker fees, My Zero Waste Act to save and expand composting. And these aren't slogans or purity tests. These are results. It's telling that my opponent would rather punch left, as effective leaders like the left at Progressive Caucus and the Working Families Party, than criticize the very real threat that is Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo poses the real threat to our city, not the Progressive Caucus.
And do you want to say a little bit more about constituent services, district office that was apparently, closed for months, and, some of the ideas about being more visible and heard in the community?
Absolutely. I want to be very explicit that we have served thousands of constituents, and we get outreach from all corners of this district, whether it's on our community Facebook pages, on the street, when I'm on the bus, to emails. We are accessible. And I'm proud that we've been able to solve thousands of constituents during that moment that we were looking for an office. The lines for District 39 changed in 2024 and left our old office outside the boundaries. And guess what? At City Council, the council member is in charge of finding a new office and being able to convince the speaker that the amount that we need to pay will be paid by the speaker. We know that at local small business owners, that commercial rents are way too high. And so during that period, we were accessible. I'm proud that we have an incredible office right now in Gowanus, across the street from Gowanus houses. And we've always had our satellite office in Kensington to serve the very diverse, plural immigrant community.
Thank you. We're going to start the next round with Ms. Hanif, but I just want to bring Ms. Kornberg in for one quick follow-up here. Would you look to join the Progressive Caucus if you were elected to the City Council? And in terms of sort of statements of principles that everybody in an ideologically identified caucus needs to sign on, is there something wrong with having sort of a list of priorities and stances that everyone needs to agree with in a caucus that's based on, sort of ideological framework?
I would look to join the caucus. I am a proud progressive. And to your point, in my work, which has all been about how to legislate effectively, the broader the coalition that you have, the more people that you can bring in, the more effective you will be. And so, saying to people, either we agree on all issues, and the defund the police issue was a polarizing issue. So to say to people, either you leave the caucus entirely and we can't work together on any of the other amazing, really important progressive issues, or you take a pledge to agree with me on this issue, to me, no, that's not the way that you legislate effectively. Those aren't the legislators that get things done.
Thank you. All right, coming back to Councilmember Hanif to start this off. This is actually a question about an issue that was just raised. This is actually an individualized set of questions in this round here. So Councilmember Hanif, let's go to this issue. It came up in a number of submissions for this forum. You've been a vocal advocate for significantly decreasing police funding and police activity. A number of people who submitted questions wanted to know what your current stance is on these issues. There's budget negotiations happening in the city right now. Are you still pursuing reductions in the police budget and police force? Or has your stance on that changed? And either way, please explain your stance right now.
Absolutely. This is such an incredibly important question. And I'm glad that this has come up from my constituents. The NYPD has a very critical role to play, and we're asking them to do way too much. My opponent is trying to paint herself as a practical reformer and me as a unrealistic radical, but I'm the only candidate who's actually won practical public safety reforms. Under my leadership, the Progressive Caucus banned solitary confinement and strengthened police transparency. And just a few hours ago, the council passed my bill to require corrections officers to be trained on how to use Narcan to prevent opioid overdoses. My opponent has rhetoric, I have results. I want to also acknowledge that we need service providers like CAVI, Kings Against Violence Initiative, that works directly in our community at the Gowanus houses to ensure that young people are in a safe space and not engaging in high-risk activities like gun violence. And I've partnered with them as they've prevented retaliatory shootings by supporting gun violence victims in hospital settings. For my opponent, this is just rhetoric. For me, it's a reality. And that's what's at the core of a lot of our differences here.
And in the current city budget negotiations, what's your stance on approaching the size and scope of the NYPD?
Look, we are making the police do way too much. And so through the Crisis to Care campaign, as Progressive Caucus co-chair, I'm fighting for a $90 million investment to expand on our mental health approach. We need crisis responders, we need mental health beds, and supportive housing. And that's exactly what the principals demanded. And so that's how we're making New York City safe.
Okay. All right, Ms. Kornberg, for you in this round.
Ben, could I maybe first respond since I was mentioned in that? I'd love to.
Sure, yeah. Go ahead and take 30 seconds on that. Sure.
Great. So I've actually done a lot of work successfully advocating to change laws to keep electeds and candidates safe. In all of that work, what is clear in speaking to electeds and election workers is that communication with local law enforcement is key. And so I have been unwavering in my stance that taking extreme stands like defunding the police, that's not going to keep us safer. That has led me to all the advocacy that I have done, and that will be my guiding light as a council member as well.
Gotcha. I think we did hear you on that previously, so that's why but point taken again. Okay, so for you, Ms. Kornberg, there's a lot of concern in the questions that came in about donors from outside the district supporting your campaign, whether it's donating directly to your campaign or more so in the degree to which there are, as you referenced in your opening statement, super PACs and special interests coming into this race to support you. What do you say to voters in the district who are concerned about that support from wealthier interests, corporations, people in groups that are supporting you with a lot of outside money? Go ahead.
So I think it's unfortunate that there has been outside spending in this race on my behalf and 6 figures of spending by super PACs on behalf of my opponent. I am the only candidate in this race who has called for there to be no outside spending. I've done that again consistently, starting months before there was any outside spending in the race. I reiterate that appeal tonight for outside groups to stay out, and I call on my opponent to join me in denouncing outside spending. But I do want to address the hypocrisy and ridiculousness of some of this. My opponent and the PAC supporting her have been trying to portray me as the candidate who, is having the support of outside spending. Well, there is a PAC that is solely funded by an RFK Jr. supporter, anti-vaxxer, who gave $1 million to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for president, who is funding my opponent. There are 6 figures of spending from a real estate developer super PAC on her behalf. And meanwhile, there are anti-Semitic tropes being thrown at me that have led to harassments and threats and people yelling at money, 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 follow the money at me on the street. So, I feel like we have to call a spade here with how ridiculous this has gotten.
Before we move on, Ms. Hanif, you can respond to that in 30 seconds if you'd like.
Thank you. Of course, we should not have outside spending. I've made a ton of powerful enemies in the time that I've served in the council, and I wear that as a badge. The community does not want billionaires or corporations to buy this council seat, which Uber, billionaire James Dolan, and pro-charter PACs are trying to do by supporting my opponent. My opponent has rejected calls to refund donations from Trump-supporting billionaires.
Okay, let's leave it
Can
there.
I respond to that since that was a specific claim?
We can't keep going back and forth here, but 15 quick seconds, please. I just want to get to a few other things.
I just want to say that the same person who is being referenced has given tens of thousands of dollars to Tish James, Yvette Clarke, Hakeem Jeffries. So the day that my opponent calls them up and says, give back those thousands of dollars, you're a MAGA supporter, that's the same day that I'll give it back. Until then, it's a complete hypocrisy, as always.
Let's leave that one there for now. We'll stick with you, Ms. Kornberg, here for this next round. It's sort of individualized again, but on a similar theme. So this is about some of the politics related to Jewish New Yorkers, Jewish voters, things happening in Israel and Gaza, and how a local council member responds to those things and handles some of those constituent concerns. So, Ms. Kornberg, this is a diverse city council district, as you know, with many constituents, both Jewish and not, who are troubled by how Israel has waged war in Gaza. What's your opinion of that? And how can you ensure the district's residents who may not be unequivocally pro-Israel, that you will hear them and represent their viewpoints if you're elected?
Thank you for this. So I'm one of those residents. I have for years opposed the Netanyahu government and called for a peaceful 2-state solution. I've been calling for a ceasefire and the peaceful return of the hostages. And unlike the council member, I've done a lot of work on that issue. I worked in Ramallah and the West Bank. I speak Arabic and Hebrew. I've worked on peace building. And from that work, I know, and that is what I ground myself in, how important it is to center shared humanity. to communicate across difference, to make space for disagreement when communities are in pain. And that's exactly what we are missing here after October 7th. The council member might sit on the task force to combat hate, but she voted against End Jew Hatred Day in the council. And when I speak to Jewish leaders across the ideological spectrum, I hear that they have been, again, stiff-armed and not listened to when they bring up concerns of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic vandalism, and hate here in the district. So I think that the concern, first and foremost, has to be for how we are bringing people together here in the district. It's not a state council, it's not a State Department position, as you kind of hinted at in your question. It's the city council. But of course, things going on do impact communities here. We have seen a rise in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism as a result of what has been happening over the past few years. And so we need to take these concerns seriously, and we need to have leadership. And that's what I have always put front and center for myself, that is able to communicate across difference, that is able to sit with disagreement and discomfort in difficult spaces. That's what I've done my whole life. That's what I've done with my work with the United Nations. And that's what I think we so desperately need here in this painful moment.
Thank you. Councilmember Hanif, you can respond to anything that you just heard, but generally the question for you on this topic is, what do you say to constituents, especially Jewish constituents, who feel you didn't appropriately recognize their pain over those Hamas attacks in October of 2023, that you've been too slow to condemn other anti-Semitic incidents or hate crimes in the city and the district? I will say your approach on this issue seems to have changed some, evolved some. So maybe if you agree with that, you want to sort of explain how feedback from constituents has impacted some of your thinking, your responsiveness on this. But go ahead, the floor is yours on these issues for 2 minutes.
I really appreciate it. I want to just start by saying the rise in anti-Semitism is real, it's deplorable, and rooting it out is a top priority, and it always has been. The pain and fear this has caused for my constituents is deeply heartbreaking. And so I've been listening to my constituents. I've met with constituents who absolutely disagree with me. And I will continue to meet with constituents because I do need feedback. I'm not perfect. I want to be able to learn. And so when meeting with Jewish constituents all throughout the district, I heard clearly the top concerns around violence, safety for synagogues, graffiti, the impact on our young people, and a feeling that they have been left behind. I've quickly responded to shameful anti-Semitic incidents in the district, and I hope to continue to do that. I've worked with the sanitation department to clean up anti-Semitic graffiti, and have removed dozens of graffiti all throughout the district. I've prioritized a close partnership with the NYPD and our local precincts to get patrols around synagogues during holidays. At City Hall, my record is clear. I've authored legislation to create an annual education campaign to combat anti-Semitism. Right now, our city does not have any such program to really address anti-Semitism. I've taken a trip with high school students at Millennium High School to the Jewish Heritage Museum to learn about the Holocaust. I've supported millions of dollars going into supporting Holocaust education among 8th graders across the city. I am deeply, deeply invested in this work, not in spite of being Muslim, but because I am Muslim. I believe deeply in interfaith organizing. I've been in interfaith organizing, and I hope to continue to be a bridge for our communities.
Thank you. Obviously, most of these topics we've discussed, including that one, could be a half hour all on their own, but thank you both for your thoughts on that. And I know there are plenty of voters and constituents who will want to hear more from you on those issues and others, but we are getting close to the end of our time together here. So we're going to move into our quick lightning round of yes, no, or very fast answers. So for this one, we'll have both candidates. Yep, there we go. Perfectly done. All right. So this is yes, no, or very short, no big explanations. Obviously, some of this stuff doesn't lend itself to lightning round, but that's just the way it goes in these time-limited forums here. So I'll bounce around who starts which one first. We'll start this one with Ms. Hanif. Should there be a significant expansion of the number of street vendor permits that the city awards? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Ms. Kornberg.
Yes.
Oh, you both already answered on a rent freeze from the Rent Guidelines Board. So moving on, should start with Ms. Kornberg. Should all e-bikes have to be licensed or only commercial or none?
I think the priority has to be safety. Part of that for me is holding delivery apps accountable for incentivizing reckless driving and building bike infrastructure.
Okay. What about e-bike licensing? None, only commercial, or all?
I think that right now we don't need more licensing, but we do need more enforcement. We do need more enforcement.
Councilmember Hanif? E-bike licensing, no licenses, only commercial or not? Or
first of all, we need to enforce existing laws. Every moped driver should have a license plate. We've got some existing laws that need to be enforced.
Off my ears.
E-bikes should not be riding.
So no, neither candidate wants to advance licensing at this point. Okay. Councilmember Haney, if you referenced this before, but the question is, should the city's sanctuary city laws be kept the same, rolled back, or increased? And increased in this sense is to further limit the cooperation of local government with immigration enforcement. So kept the same, rolled back, or increased sanctuary city laws. Councilmember Hanif, I believe you already said
strengthened. Yes, I have a piece of legislation. We got to pass it. The New York City Trust Act.
Kept the same, rolled back, or strengthened?
Absolutely strengthened. Proud granddaughter of people who came here as refugees. And I think that we have to be keeping the city of immigrants.
All right. This is name one specific capital project you would pursue for the district's infrastructure if you're in office next year. Or Councilmember Hanif, you can obviously give one that you're fighting for right now, but what's one specific capital project for the district's infrastructure that you would prioritize? Councilmember Hanif?
This is a really good one. We need to get rid of the concrete recycling facility. The Brooklyn Marine Terminal project is a huge opportunity. Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Kornberg, what's one capital project for the district you'd love to prioritize?
Too many schools. We talked about elevators. Too many schools don't have access to elevators or accessibility infrastructure. So let's make schools accessible and give students the tools they need.
Thank you. We're just looking for quick ones here because we got to let everybody go. Ms. Kornberg, yes or no? Does New York City need more hotels? Yes or no?
New York City needs to prioritize the housing crisis that we're in right now, where people don't have spaces to live.
Hanif, yes or no? More hotels in New York City?
Nope.
No. Okay. Should Ms. Hanif, starting with you, there's questions about whether restrictions on small property owners renting out a room should be lifted so that people can utilize the Airbnb platform to bring in a little more income. Should those restrictions be rolled back slightly for small property owners? Yes or no?
No.
And Ms. Kornberg?
No.
Okay. What is one city council committee that you would like to chair if you're in the city council next year? For Ms. Hanif, not one you've already chaired. What's another council committee that you'd like to chair in the future, Ms. Hanif?
Sanitation.
And Ms. Kornberg?
Transportation. That's how we make all of the things that I talked about a reality.
Okay. What is one city agency, Ms. Kornberg, that you think needs to be a lot more, needs to have a lot more oversight, be a lot more efficient? What's one city agency where you think it's not really optimized at all and you want to get in there and use some of the oversight powers of the city council to scrutinize? One city agency.
That's really tough to answer because I wrote a whole book on strengthening oversight processes in general. I think we need to change the process of oversight, have nominations.
Right, no agency?
I think basically the oversight process.
Okay, Councilmember Hanif, one city agency that needs more oversight?
Sorry, and I think to your question that SDNY is definitely an agency that
okay, thank you.
We should be overseeing better.
Councilmember Hanif, one city agency that needs a lot more oversight.
Housing preservation and development. We are not building the affordable housing as quickly as possible.
Got it. Last one. Councilmember Hanif, who are you supporting in the Democratic primary for mayor that's happening alongside your primary?
I am supporting Zohran Mamdani and Brad Lander, both of have endorsed me. I've worked very
And
closely
Ms.
with them. Excellent
Anybody else
candidates.
on your ballot you want to name? You get 5.
Adrian Adams, please use the full 5 slate. Don't
Okay.
rank
And Ms.
evil
Kornberg,
Andrew Cuomo.
who are you supporting in the Democratic primary for mayor?
I can tell you who I'm not supporting. I'm a proud proponent of the Dream campaign. I will not be ranking Andrew Cuomo. We need a new mayor who is not Eric Adams. There's some other wonderful candidates on the ballot, progressive, wonderful candidates. Haven't decided yet in what order I'm ranking them.
Okay. Anybody else that you're sure won't be on your ballot, Ms. Kornberg?
Andrew Cuomo is the number 1 right now, not on my ballot.
Thank you. All right. Thank you both. I appreciate it. I know it's hard to give those short answers. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for the host for having me as moderator, and everybody be ready to vote.
Thank you all.
Much.